consciousness, the final frontier. These are the voyages into the universe between your ears. Our mission: to explore collective wisdom, seek out amazing secrets, and spread the message of personal potential.
All right. Hello, everyone in the podcast universe. I'm Tim C. Starr, bringing you the universe between your ears. I am joined by Mr. Gabi Musheyev, as always.
Hi. Hello to everyone. Great to be here again. Thank you. Thank you.
And our guest today is Jessica Conrad. I've already told her that her headshot looks like an actress, who I think I should know.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Yeah. Jessica is a certified holistic life and wellness coach. She has a master's degree in holistic health studies. She works with all women looking to achieve life goals, but that may be stuck in their own way due to low self-esteem or limiting beliefs. But she specializes in working with women battling infertility and childlessness.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to the bio and to her when we're going to discover that in process, I think, versus me just reading.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Jessica, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I think what we need to do with this particular episode is, because your story is really as integral to the point of why I wanted you here. So why don't we start there? Go ahead and tell everybody, you're giving the background and how you got into what you're doing. And then go from
okay.
there.
So I think it's best if I just start with a little bio of myself, because it's really integral to where I am now, right, and why I work with this niche of women. I started having issues, pain issues, when I was about 19. So I'm 41 now. So most of my adult life I've lived with this. It started with cysts and it matured into other reproductive issues. I had stage IV endometriosis, and I had it twice because I went in and had surgery, had it removed, and it came back with a vengeance. And by the time I had my second surgery, the doctor told me if he didn't know I was trying to conceive, he would have just done a full hysterectomy and it would have been over with, because it was one of the worst cases he had seen. And from that, so I pretty much my whole life had known I might have issues with fertility, but I was kind of in college and living my life, so it wasn't really an issue until my husband and I, wanted to try. And I went to the doctor, and he basically told me IVF was the only way I could possibly ever get pregnant. There was no other way for me to get pregnant. And so I went home and I fell on the floor in a puddle, and I cried and I cried and I cried. And when I was done, I realized I don't want to feel this way anymore. I wasn't living life. I didn't want to feel this way. The pain needs to stop, and I need to do something about it. So I told the doctors, thank you, but no thank you. And I just knew in my gut that at some point I'd be a mother. I just didn't know how, if I would be able to conceive or adoption. Everything was open to me. But I changed my mindset. I removed the blinders that infertility can cause, because all you're thinking and seeing is, fertility. Oh, this one just got pregnant. Oh, fertility. Oh, this commercial, or, your day is basically revolves around your infertility and what you're going to do. And so I changed my mindset, and I was like, if it's going to happen, it will happen. And me stressing and worrying is not going to somehow make it manifest.
Right.
So I changed my mindset. I changed the way I was thinking about it. And my husband and I came to the agreement, if it happened, it's a miracle. And if it didn't, we are still okay. And there's still nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me for having these issues.
Right.
I'm not broke, I think a lot of times women, it's shameful, because this is what your body was made to do. You were born with a uterus and all these things to get pregnant. And when you're a woman and you can't do the one thing, not that all women want children, but when you can't do the one thing your body is supposed to do, it's a little shameful. It's kind of embarrassing. It's a kind of, why me? Mm-hmm. So I changed my mindset. If it was meant to be, it was meant to be. I did other holistic modalities. I changed my diet. I did herbs and supplements. I did acupuncture. And lo and behold, I got pregnant. And I got pregnant, and I did miscarry. The first time I miscarried, I went to the hospital, and I thought I was miscarrying, and I was in the ER for a couple hours. Didn't have any beds, so I was in the hallway on a gurney for a couple hours, thinking I was losing, what was going on. And when I did see the doctor, he walked in the door, he says, "Oh, I got great news, you're not pregnant." And so I was a little taken back, by that, some bedside manner. Yeah. But people think, "Oh my gosh, that's terrible." But for me, I had been told almost my whole adult life I probably would not be able to get pregnant. Mm-hmm. I took the pregnancy test, and it came back positive. And that happened to the ER. I went to the fertility doctor. I talked to him about it, and he said, "Those tests are as accurate as anything I can give you in my office. So you were probably pregnant, and it just didn't, for whatever reason."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that mindset, to me, I was like, holy, you know what?
You can say shit.
Pregnant. Holy shit, I can get pregnant. I've been told almost my whole adult life that it would never happen for me because of everything going on. And I think people might not understand. It seems weird, oh, you miscarried, but yet you're happy.
Yep.
Yeah, because I did something that I had been told I wouldn't be able to. And eventually, a couple months later, I did get pregnant again, and I have a rambunctious 6-year-old running around.
I'd love, because there's all of these law of attraction components that are part of your story, right? You struggled, you tried hard, you focused all over it and tried to make it happen. It wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't happen.
You gave
up.
up.
Pushed it away further.
Yeah.
I was almost strangling it, and it just kind of pushed it further.
Yeah, and then you gave up and stopped trying to control. Mm-hmm. Said, "All right, universe, if it's going to happen, you'll make it happen. I'm not going to worry about it anymore." You did do some physical things to change your sort of the environment to make it possible, right?
Right.
Changing your diet and things. And then what was the last one? I'm lucky to remember that many. It'll come to me, but this is it's a classic story, right? It's the classic pattern for these stories where people. I used to know. I still know her. I just don't hang out with her. A woman she's an acupuncturist, and her specialty is women's fertility issues, and women tend to go to her as a last resort.
Right.
And they've for the most part they've already given up worrying about it, and they've resigned themselves to, I'm not going to get pregnant. And then they go and see her, and just in the act of getting acupuncture, in case anybody doesn't know, you're forced to be still. Mm-hmm. You have to lay there and not move.
Very hard to do in the regular world.
Yeah. And it will relax the hell out of you.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And what do we need to do if we want to manifest things? We got to relax. Mm-hmm. So I love the story because, I know what the thing was you saw when you had the miscarriage, you weren't looking at the miscarriage. You weren't focusing on that. You were focusing on the evidence that you could do what you wanted.
Yes.
Or you can, my perspective is that's the universe dangling the thing in front of you and saying, see, it's possible.
Yes,
see?
Exactly. And that's why it upsets me when doctors tell women never, 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 because, well, you're not a god. You don't know. Unless they've had a hysterectomy and they don't have the equipment, you can't say never. Don't know.
Right.
And saying that to a woman, oftentimes, it's like it just puts that message on repeat in your head, and you're kind of stuck with this tape playing over and over, because that's all you can remember hearing is, well, the doctor said, well, the doctor said. It really pisses me off.
Yeah.
That they say this, because
it has effect, because that's at least in the moment, that's the highest authority figure that you can go to, right?
Right.
They're telling you this is how it is. Done.
Well, I can and when I got pregnant the second time, I went back to him, the doctor who flat out told me it would never happen, because I had to get blood work to confirm that I actually was. And I was. And I took it to the doctor and throw it in his face. But I handed it to him and was like, look, and all he did was, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Well, I know what to tell you.
You were wrong.
We're wrong.
So, yeah. Gabby, am I reading you wrong?
Yeah.
It kind of looks like you're ready to jump in. You got that body language going on.
There's so much emotion in this story. What's going through my mind is just how much a young woman wants to have this, this fulfillment from bearing a child and giving birth to this new life, right? And you're right, the ultimate creation, when we say, the ultimate creation in this world, bringing a child in. Is there a stronger love than between a mother and her child, right?
Right.
And I'm just listening to you, and God bless that you had the strength, to go through these challenges. And I could just imagine that your husband was very supportive as well, right? I've been kind of in the kind of similar situation, because we were having actually the distance between our children in years is 13 years, because we were trying and it didn't happen. And we went through all kinds of surgery, but initially, just like for you, we heard, don't try. I mean, it's trouble, and we just, we never gave up. We were seeking second opinions, and finally got one doctor who only could be paid in cash. And it was a Chinese doctor, and he saw us in his private office, away from any clinics or whatever, and which was kind of like
the backseat of a.
It was kind of like, I was thinking that's a little shady. I hope they don't do anything that's outside of the approved medical practice here in the U.S. And miraculously, he led us to the destination, and we had a healthy, as you said, rambunctious.
Oh yeah.
Uh-oh. Gabby's feed just went away.
Froze up a little.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. He got all choked up talking about it.
How old are your children now, Jessica?
Mine, he's 6. Yeah. I have one. And
you have one.
Old.
So now you're carrying the second one?
Oh no, I only have one.
Oh, okay. I understood that maybe you got pregnant the second time as well.
No, just one. He's enough. He's a handful. He's a big enough blessing.
Gabby's trying to plant a different seed.
No.
Yeah.
No. We're good. Yeah. We're good.
Yeah.
So I want to transition a little bit into talking about. Okay. Well, let's back up a step. So you went through this process.
Yeah.
You had the child. Were you already doing coaching at that point, or was this the trigger that sent you into it?
Yes, and ironically, it was probably maybe, 7 or 8 years ago, before I got pregnant and I went through all this. I went to the school I went to get my coaching degree. And I sat down and they were like, here's all the workload. And I was like, no, it's not for me. It's not for me. I'm not doing it. It wasn't for me at that time. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't ready to receive it. So I left. And then I went through all this journey of IVF and everything. And I realized, and I know I heard you talk about this, and people hate this. Everything happens for a reason. Mm. People hate it. But people hate it because they haven't learned the message yet or the reason for it. When you're in the middle of it, you can't understand it.
Right.
Kind of when you get to the other side, it was like, oh, yes. So I felt I had gone through this for a reason. And my reason is to help other women so that they never have to feel as down and vulnerable and sad and embarrassed as I did. And so I went back, and then I went back to the school after having my son and everything else. Then I decided to go back to school with all the homework,
right.
Time to do it.
Because you didn't have enough to do with a newborn.
I didn't have enough to do.
Yeah. So, okay, so then where I had initially started to go to was, so in working with other women, are you finding that, well, let me ask it this way. How big a piece is the mindset piece in a percentage kind of thing? Are most of the people you're dealing with, is that the problem, or?
I mean, obviously there's medical reasons, I'm not, but my goal is to, like I said, is to take those blinders off and and let you redirect that energy, that anxiety somewhere else. What's another life goal you have? What else is something that, you could put all this energy to something positive? Whatever you wanted to do. Did you want to go back to school? Do you want to do this? Do you want to volunteer? What else can we do that we can focus that energy on, as something positive? And, sometimes when you do that, you take that pressure off yourself. That's when it happens.
Yeah. Are you an Abraham Hicks follower?
It's so funny. You're going to love this. So my son just started, my husband reads some of these books every night, right? And the new book has a picture of Abraham Lincoln on it. And I'm like, okay, Abraham. That's funny. I'm like, why Abraham? Okay, right? And so then I'm listening to your podcast and you're talking about Abraham Hicks. I'm like, oh, I guess the universe is trying to, right? So I just started following her on stuff because I'm like,
cool.
The universe is trying to tell me.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Well, the reason I ask is because in their teachings, a primary, one of the pillars of how this works is to find the next better feeling thought, right? Which is exactly what you just described, helping people to do, is take your focus away from the trouble and move it for a little. It doesn't mean you deny it, doesn't mean you necessarily ignore it, but
no.
It doesn't, as you said earlier, it doesn't do any good for you to just be constantly grinding your teeth over it.
Right.
So put your attention on something that you enjoy or something to look forward to.
Right.
Right? And give that other...
And I would never say you can, it's going to happen, it's not going to happen for you. I'm not a doctor, that's not what I'm here. I'm just here to help you, boost your energy and feel good about yourself again. It's really, once you kind of dig that hole, it's really hard to get out of it by yourself, and a lot of times I'll ask women, like, what is it about motherhood that you're drawn to? What emotions, what feelings come up for you about motherhood? Well, I want to be loved and happiness and joy. Okay, so let's figure out all those emotions that motherhood would bring you. What else could you do that would give you those similar feelings? And let's move it there for now and focus on something we can actually tangibly do right now. Feel better.
Are you coming from a family of many children? You had many siblings?
Me?
Yeah.
I have an older brother and some half siblings.
So you grew up around like a traditional family setting, right?
Well, me and my parents were divorced, but that's so common now. But say
That's become traditional. Yeah.
what I'm trying
more
to
traditional.
I'm trying to see, like, have you like traced back the origins of such strong desire to have children, like to the point that you were thinking, you know, feeling shameful, for example, as you said, right, that you couldn't do it physically.
Yeah. I mean, not really, because like as like a kid, I don't ever remember being like playing house or mom.
Mm-hmm.
Even like high school and college, I was never really worried about weddings and children and that. It was, I guess, more once, you know, I met my husband, and then we decided, it was more once I met him, I decided I wanted to have a child with him.
Mm.
And, you know, the two of us would bring a child into this world, because we're both, I feel like we just both have very high morals and standards, and we wanted to bring. And then I was like, okay, yes, let's bring a child into the world. And it was like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting that you know, in the place where I was born, and this is Central Asia, you know, we traditionally, you know, girls got married before they were like 21, 22, and 9 months after there'll be a baby, and then about a year after that there'll be another baby, and usually we went up to 3 and then stopped, right? And nobody ever even like had a choice, like I really thought about having children or not having children, right? And later, when we found ourselves here, the whole family, right? It was an interesting culture shift that, you know, people generally had children way later after all education was done, you know, and they're professionals already and they're making good money or whatever. But the risks are much higher, right? And that's very interesting that, you know, those children born late, they're much more, you know, prone to having different issues, you know, and also it's a little unsafe for mothers as well, right?
Right.
So kind of like, but at the same time, those children who were born in the families that are already kind of matured and had more stability, and parents kind of already had some kind of personal growth, those children are absolutely way more likely to be fulfilled in their lives, right? It's a kind of like interesting thing. It's give or take, right?
There's trade-offs for everything, right?
Yeah, there's always like a payoff, right, for this. But one thing was interesting, that many millennials, right, and I'm kind of like talking with millennials because of my daughter, her generation, they're at this time, they're consciously deciding not to have children. Have you encountered this? And I was like, what an interesting phenomenon. So something has changed. See, like I feel such a strong desire from you. By the way, you look like a millennial to me. When Tim said it's like 40 something, right? Yeah. Or approaching 40.
41.
I didn't give
I thought you like Katy Perry. You know, the celebrity you remind me is Katy Perry, actually. So I was like, oh, this is like Katy Perry in her early days, you know, early.
Thank you.
Well, I want to comment on the, you know, the cultural differences. It's because that's not the only area, but I've seen, my wife is from Peru, and Latin culture, they have a certain, and in the whole country, it's a Catholic country, and so they have the very religious sort of umbrella over the top of things. And 2 decades ago, for them, the idea that a boy and a girl, man and a woman, would live together without being married, that no, that's blasphemy. That's right. That's a big deal. That's changed a lot. Having kids out of wedlock, that's changed a lot. But it's that same thing happened here. Right? If you go back to the 40s and 50s, we had that same attitude. I think a big driving force for this is money. Right? We're much more well off financially today in general than we ever have been. And so at a much younger age, we have freedom. Right? We have the money to go, and because you can be 17 and go get a job that will pay your rent, and you can move out of the house and have your freedom. And when I see these other countries that their economies are coming up, you see the same changes. So I think that's a big piece of it. And Gabby, the money applies to having kids. As we have more money and more freedom, and we're used to independence, people start thinking a little harder about, do I want to get tied down by having kids?
Right.
I think that's a piece of it.
And that's a good point, because I do have girlfriends, who have made the decision they don't want kids. It's not for them. And I also think that's great that you know and you stick to. If you don't want children, have children.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So, I applaud them that they know it's not for them, That's why I like to distinguish that I work more with women with infertility, for women who want children, but plenty of women who just don't want children, and that's fine. That's their choice. But, I want to make the distinction. It's when I say childless women who do want children, but it's not.
Yeah,
right.
That's fascinating to me in this respect. Because, wanting something so much from the place of being incomplete, right? So you have a dissatisfaction and you don't feel happy. So you're not in the place of happiness that you want these children from, right? You're desperate, right? That usually, according to the teachings of so many spiritual teachers, that's the hardest way of getting where you want. You're going to go through a lot of trouble, right?
Right.
Getting there, because it's much shorter, as they teach. It's a much more efficient way is to find balance and find happiness and stability and be complete with your present moment, and then from that foundation, then really pursue whatever the desire that you want, right?
Right. Yeah, it's not about saying don't focus on having children anymore. That,
Right.
You could still, want them. It's just not your whole soul focus in life.
Right. What I also want to add to this is that on second thought is the strongest desire, and especially when you imagine yourself, right? When you creating a movie in your mind, how you are a mother and you're taking care of your little baby and you're playing this whole script, right? Imagining the feeling of holding the baby and the smell of the baby and feeding and how great it must be, right? That's the surest way of getting what you want, because that's how we create, right? This is a deliberate creation process, right? So so what fascinates me is that you want to feel these things, but take this idea of lack out of this equation, right? And that's interesting meditation. I always fascinate. How do you make sure you don't cross the line?
Yeah. I think when it becomes an obsession, like an obsession, that's when you're kind of pushing it away. Of course, you want the things you're saying, and that's how you manifest. You put it out there, but it somehow turns more into this obsession. Every waking moment.
It's
that's when you have to learn to pull back a little.
Yeah, it's the attachment issue, right? If you're
conditional,
really,
right?
If you're really attached to having a baby, to that idea, and that's the important thing. And if the idea that, it might not happen, if that upsets you, there's some work to be done.
Right.
Because it's the lack mentality. You're really not thinking about having the child. You're thinking about not having the child.
Right.
Right? You're worried about that. But if you can get to that point where you're okay if it doesn't happen, which you described, right? It'll happen. But it's
right.
that super desire thing.
And I think they say when you're in that lack mentality for whatever it is, money, children, when you're in that lack, oh my God mentality, that's when we kind of push the universe and that law of attraction away, when we're in that deep state of lack or whatever it is.
Well, that's what you're focused on. So that's what you get.
Mm-hmm.
You get more of that.
Right.
And a lot of people, this is the tricky part. One of the tricky parts of this whole concept is, being aware that you can want something too much. Right? You can be, although that's not even the right phrasing of it, but you can be apparently in the right mindset and be focused on the good stuff and all of these, feeling and all that, but you're actually, it's coming out of, I don't have it, so this is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you're telling the universe to go both directions at the same time.
Right. It's also like you talk to people and you say, don't say what you don't want.
Yeah.
Because you're initially putting it out there into the universe, I don't want this, I don't want that. No. What do you want? Never put the negative, because you're actually putting it out there into the universe. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Universe doesn't care.
The desire, come to think of it, the desire could be so powerful, right, that they could override any stumbling blocks. I mean, the resistance, whatever, or even if you're shooting this rocket from the place of lack and desperation and obsession, but I'm thinking, if the desire, if that variable on this side of the equation is so huge, right, that it could just brute force smash the whole thing and just
I agree with you.
Get pregnant.
I agree with you, but I think it probably will also bring some other issues.
It usually does. Brute force does create issues, right?
Right.
Yeah, the by far the best route to go is get feeling really good about what can happen and put it out there, and then try to detach from that expectation that it has to happen.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's what the stage we were at. It was like, do I want a baby? Yeah. If it doesn't happen, am I still going to be fine? Yeah. I'm still going to be happy, even if it doesn't happen. So, we'll see what happens. And
it happened.
I got pregnant, so.
In hindsight, sometimes my wife and I were looking at each other and we're thinking, what could have been if we hadn't had our boy, right? He is such a connecting link in the family that unites us, and on so many different levels, right? Also teaches us a lot, right?
Yeah.
He's been incredible, and I'm thinking, what a blessing. So, and that gives you a certain assurance that all those efforts, all the trouble that we went through was way worth it. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
The amount of good that was there, and that's what it is. You see, in something that is so hard to get, sometimes there's such a great gift there. That the more work you put in, the greater the gift. And the unwrapping this gift is an ongoing thing, right? And
right.
Gosh, yeah.
Well,
there are times when I look at, now my son is 6, but there are times when I just look at him and it feels surreal to me, even 6 years later, that this is my child. Like, it's sometimes I can just sit and stare at him in awe. I did this. This is my child,
right? This is bliss, yeah.
He gets in trouble, but
Well, I want to comment on what you were saying, Gabi. If you're not in the right mindset as you're looking at the results, right? As you're looking at your child, if you're there are plenty of people out there who would look at it, at the whole process, and just go, God, it was a lot of struggle, and now here he is or here she is, and they got this problem or that problem, whatever, and I don't see this as a blessing. This is a lot of work. I didn't ask for this, right? And it's not about the kid, but it's about the situation. And so, and this thought is just now coming to me, if that's something that commonly is an occurrence with people who have waited until they were older to have children, maybe that's the reason, right? Is because at that point, then they're going to have a different perspective on it, and it's more of an appreciation that the child is here,
right?
Versus
that's a
what a struggle this was.
Yeah.
Right.
You're too young, and sometimes that's all you can see is the crap.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, not to say we don't have crap going on, because we have our own stuff, and life happens, right? But I am, and I do think you're right. I think if I had him in my 20s or something, I don't think I'd be able to sit back and look at him and appreciate him for who he is and everything, and have that real moment of, this is my child. It would be more like what you're saying, like, I got blah, blah,
Yeah.
But now I'm older and more mature, and I've been through things, and I've studied things, and I'm emotionally at a better place.
Yeah.
My body may have been more physically at a better place in my 20s, but now in my 40s, I'm more emotionally and spiritually in a better place.
Right. Which is more important for the kid.
Right.
Well, there was something I was just going to... All right, it's gone. It'll come back to me.
I
have a comment that I had, and just...
I have a question for you, Jessica. So obviously you probably encounter all kinds of different situations, right? When women find you, and you need to somehow assess where they stand, right?
Right.
At this point. And so, I mean, if you see that by all medical accounts, the tests or whatever, it's clearly indicating that they will probably not conceive, right? I mean, but they want to believe that they will, and they found you to help them, right? I mean, there's always this risk of not getting through, right? And and how do you deal with that? Like, what's the exit strategy? Because I mean, obviously, some miracles do happen. But...
Yeah, and as a life coach, I don't deal with that aspect. Like I say to them, the first thing is, it's not, whether you get pregnant or don't get pregnant, that's really what we're about.
Okay.
We're focus on other,
the mission is clear ahead of time, right?
Yes, yes, right. I'm not a doctor. I can't say you will or won't, It's an aspect of your life. It's what drew you to find me, that you're going through this. But that's not really what we're working on. We're not really working on fertility or infertility. We're working on you, getting you mentally, emotionally, spiritually to a better place in your life. It's more about just working on them, making them feel better. So
that you can achieve that state of non-attachment to the outcome.
Yes, right, exactly.
Yeah. And so when you were desiring a baby, did you specifically want to have your baby, like conceive a baby, or it didn't have to be? I mean, did you say, universe, give me a baby? How it's gonna happen? It's not up to me, but I want to be a mother. I want to be a mother figure, in other words.
Right. And ironically, it started out, my husband and I, and luckily I was very blessed that my husband knew from a very early age that I may or may not be able to have biological children. He was okay with that, because he was like, well, we can adopt. So I was blessed to have a husband that was understanding in that too. And so then it started like, oh, let's try to conceive, and if we don't, then we'll adopt. But then somehow along the way, it turned more into this control obsession, like, now I want my own, like, you can't have it, so now I want it, you know what I mean? And then you become more obsessed and obsessed and obsessed with it. Like I said, until finally I just kind of had my little breakdown and was like, I can't do this anymore. You know, if it happens, if we do conceive, good. If not, then we'll look into adoption.
Yeah.
Or just go snag one off the street.
Oh, no, it's so much work into adopting. So much work.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so I did you need to follow up on that, Gabi? Because I remember what I wanted to ask.
I just agree that we kind of went this path, you know, also as a plan B thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it felt so good to pursue this, and we went as far as actually, you know, visiting an organization where the babies were for adoption, and looking at the babies, and only then it hit me, you know, that how serious and what responsibility that was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I really questioned whether I was ready in my, I don't know what that was, my mindset, or like, I mean, some people are just natural, you know, but I was questioning myself whether I'd be able to really give love to a child. Of course, it's easy if they're well behaved and whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But many of these babies were coming from distressed environments, you know, and definitely, you know, candidates for troubled babies, because they might have come from all kinds. I mean, you know how much is dependent on whether the mother was under stress while carrying the baby. I mean, I studied a lot of that stuff, especially from this guy, Dr. Lipton, who had a fascinating book on this topic. And he was saying, it was incredible, I remember, that there was an experiment. I'm quickly going to say this, team. I'm sorry, you holding on to your question? I don't want to you forget.
Don't forget.
Yeah, it was interesting question, a very interesting observation, that mothers whose environments were unsafe during pregnancy, surrounded by loud noises and, you know, screaming and yelling and things thrown at, you know, the places, whatever, the baby would get a message, data, through the umbilical cord. It's not just food that travels, the information, the data travels, right? And the data is essentially, you know, simplifying it, is saying the environment that you're going to be born into is not very safe. You're going to have, as you're going to get born, you're going to have to fight for your survival. These are the signaling, you know, the signaling that goes to baby, to the right? And what happens, the intelligence of this is such that the resources are being redistributed from the baby's brain to the development of the musculature and core strength of the baby. And so when they get born, they're actually physically stronger as a result of this environment, right? And so but not so intellectually developed, because the resources were not directed in that way.
Right.
And therefore, we are seeing that, for example, you know, the African Americans, you know, when they were exposed to the slavery, right, the babies were way stronger physically, right? And as a result, the lineage, right, you could see that if you compare the bodies, the musculature of an African American race, right, even from birth, they're much stronger. I mean, they're much more developed and beautiful, you know, aesthetically beautiful bodies, right? And he came to that conclusion, and I thought it was fascinating. On the other side of the spectrum, very peaceful, safe pregnancy terms resulted in less physically developed but more intellectual babies, who are much more, you know, deeper thinkers and nuanced thinkers, and the creative professions, they're great teachers and all these things. So that's fascinating, the environment, right? And now we're looking at these babies and we really don't know, right, what kind of conditions. So I guess this uncertainty factor, right? It had to be a commitment. Okay, whatever that might be, you have to commit 100% of being a reliable, nourishing parent. And that commitment at that time, which was over 10 years ago, right, I wasn't able to make. Now I probably would.
Well, it's it's an honest assessment.
It's an honest, yeah. I couldn't tell myself I could honestly pull it through.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sorry.
No, that's all right. So the question I wanted to ask, because we're starting to run up against a time limit here too.
Yeah.
Jessica, when you're working with these various women, does anybody come to mind as a particularly satisfying, client that maybe somebody was really looking, depressed and whatever, really on the negative side of things, and then in the end had a great outcome?
Yes, and I think it's almost, women almost kind of refine themselves because they almost put so much of their identity into this, either trying to conceive or being infertile. They lose themselves and who they are in the process. So it's kind of like a rebirth, a reawakening to find themselves again and remember how much more they have to offer. They are so wonderful and blessed, and they have so much to offer themselves and everybody else. And for them to find that in themselves again and take a deep breath, it is really uplifting. It's why I do it. It's why I'm so passionate about doing this, So yes.
All right. I'm thinking maybe this is a good time. Any pressing questions, Gabby, or Jessica? Is there anything that you're feeling you really need to get out before we?
No, I'm pretty good.
I didn't even know that this kind of coaching was available, and it looks like in our times that's kind of new. Would you say that this is a new phenomenon that
I think it is, because it's really ironic. I've spoken to women who were in my shoes. They were trying, and then subsequently they did have children. And I'll randomly speak to a woman, and she'll say, "Where was this when I was trying to get pregnant?" I was going through infertility. And I said, exactly. And that's exactly why I'm doing this, because where was it when I was going through it?
Right.
I didn't feel like I had a support system. I mean, my husband and family is good, but
the question that immediately comes into my mind when you say that is, okay, but would you have been able to hear it? Because that's the other part of that equation is may very well be that there were people all over the place, but if you're not in a place to hear it, you'll never see them. Right.
So I do give them a questionnaire and make them fill out to see where they are in the process. Because if they're not willing, there's work involved. This isn't just, sit back and do nothing. This is work, Yep. Like, as you say, like, what is the pain really costing you? Is the pain become so great that now you're willing to do something about it? And if they, if the survey looks like they are, at a good place, then I'll take them on. But if I think that they're not, they're just doing it, but they're not really in it.
Right.
And it's not their time. Maybe you need a different coach. I can recommend a different coach.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, cool.
Do you also coach husbands as well? Sorry, just quickly. I mean, it has to be, right? I mean, it has to be their partners, right?
They're partners, but at this point, I just solely working with what I know from the woman perspective.
Yeah.
Because I've been through it. So.
Yeah. I'm telling you this because I definitely needed some coaching myself at that time, for sure. It felt lonely. And We're like it's just two of us.
That's really common, when you get in, you're struggling with something big. You really somehow we have this ability to sort of shut off this the peripheral vision or something. We shut off the ability to look around and go, I wonder if there's help. I wonder if there's anybody else going through this. I mean, and we just tend to think that we're all alone with whatever that problem is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's never true.
Only one. You're the only one.
Yeah. All right. Well, before Gabi jumps in and asks another question, how do people get more of Jessica Conrad?
They can go right to my website, jessicalconrad.com, and they can email me through there and ask me any question. I'm very much an open book, whatever they need, whatever questions they have.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us. This went pretty quickly. I knew we'd get into some good stuff here. I really, this turned out actually, it didn't go where I thought. Again, I got to stop expecting these things, but it didn't go where I thought it would go, the conversation. But it was great. We got into some stuff I didn't know that we would get into and learned a thing or two here and there. And I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you having me. Thank you. And I appreciate you letting me get the word out there to, Yeah, absolutely. It's important. There is support out there for them, whether they use me or somebody else. Just go find. You need support. Go find it. Yep. Cool. All right. Well,
Thank you for what you do, Jessica. I appreciate that. Thank you. Good luck with that. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Signing off.
Bye.
See you next time.
Bye.
Hi, this is Tim Starr. Thanks for joining me and Gabi on the universe between your ears. We really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us for a little while. And we'd like to see you again. So be sure to subscribe wherever it is you're consuming the podcast from, whether it's YouTube or Stitcher or iTunes or whatever the hell else is out there. We want to see you again. We also want to hear from you. So let us know what you think of each episode. Let us know if you got an idea for a future episode that you think would be just killer. Absolutely, let us know. All right? Thanks again, and we will see you next time around. Bye-bye.